All right, welcome to Pass the Mic for Friday, March 31st, last Friday in March, episode 65. Mike Piotti here on a spring break Zoom. Joining me, Mr. Michael Gervasi.
Never retire or put my mic on the shelf. The baddest rapper in the history of a rap itself. Not bitter or mad, just proving I'm bad. You want to hit? Give me an hour plus a pen and a pad. I think you're to get this one. Give it some thought. I'll give you a hint. Hold on. This song has been on Pass the Mic before.
The song has been on Pass the Mic.
Yeah, the second time I've done this one.
Is it MC Hammer?
Not MC Hammer. It's LL Cool J. I'm bad.
Oh, you used the same song before as an intro, or just?
I did, but I put as the intro. But I put a part that I thought you would get. This I just heard this song pulling into my driveway today, and I thought, man, that's a cool part. So I thought I'd do that.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
No good.
Not the first time you've disappointed me.
No, but I've been pretty. Yeah, it won't be the last either. That's for sure.
Right.
Feedback from last week, our famous cheater episode. I posted a little picture of Joey Greco, host of the classic TV show Cheaters, to sort of prep the show. And it's interesting. I actually had someone. I'm not going to name the staff member, but a staff member brought me a paper that was clearly written using the chat GBT technology. Awful. You would have to be a robot not to guess that this wasn't not written by any human being. Now, I don't know if this person used the cheapest version they could find out there or whatever, but we sort of talked about it last week that you get to know your kids, you know their vocabulary, and one or two words could pop up. The problem that I noticed with this actual piece of writing is that they tend to repeat things over and over. This mechanic, to whatever you say you want addressed, these computers overcompensate, saying things way more often that need to be said, and a part of that, like when I taught writing, and my motto for writing and my motto for everything is less is more. If you can get your point across, and if you can get what you need to get across in it, because all the time people, 6 to 8 pages long, please, everyone's always worried about length, whether it be a speech or a paper. And my philosophy is, if you can communicate what you want to communicate and the information comes across and you do it well enough. I've had very well written 1.5-page papers that are well done, and I've had awful 8-page papers on the same topic. And so I think that's where this sort of like people will get caught up, and it was clearly on this, like it was just trying to add length. So did you get any other feedback on
no,
cheating?
just not much actually. I always say no, but then I contradict myself, I guess. But yeah, very little, but everybody was kind of in agreement. Like, if you don't want kids to cheat, don't send stuff home, because I told my little anecdote about high school.
Group work. Stuff you send home or take home tests or quizzes. The minute you do that,
you're opening up. Yep.
Yeah. Also, Rocky Georgie, who's now unemployed by Pass the Mic, texted me last night with one of my other classmates that was back in that same group that had the famous calculator, and the text message said something like "Stop cheating in pre-algebra." And and it wasn't pre-algebra. For the record, I made algebra by the time I was in 9th grade. It was chemistry where the cheating took place on the calculator. We did get a lot of feedback too on our commercials. Miss Torres is Team Mayhem. Did you get did anybody else reach out to you about?
Max agrees. Actually, we had that conversation though. Max agrees about Mayhem. Also, I got to say, Max was very upset with us. He felt like he was attacked right from the start of the show. So we're not here to hurt people's feelings, especially regularly.
No, and he does.
Max, we're very sorry if we hurt your feelings.
Yeah, and all kidding aside, he does do a great job in that role he's in down there at Shoemate. So all kidding aside, I wouldn't want.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is a lot of work. Mic of the week. It is opening day. We're recording this on Thursday the 30th. We're a little last minute here. We're recording this on Thursday the 30th. It's opening day. Do you realize that?
In fact, I was listening a little bit today. The Tigers offense picked right back up where it left off last year.
I was the one that made the post on our Facebook page. I put the game on the TV, and I had the best nap today on my couch ever with that going in the I just obviously I didn't miss any wild offense, and had a great nap. The Pirates are currently playing right now at Riverfront State or whatever, Great American Ballpark, I believe is the name, in Cincinnati. The Reds and Pirates, two top-notch Major League Baseball teams that are going to be vying to avoid 90 to 100 losses.
The worst thing that's going to happen. interesting fact here. A couple things actually. Well, we'll get into baseball in a second, but Ken Griffey Jr. this year will be the fourth highest paid member of the Cincinnati Reds. Max actually told me that earlier. He said third, but it's actually the fourth.
He'd probably be the highest paid Pirate.
I'm sure he would be, yeah, without question. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're getting go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off. What do you think? So the Tiger game today was 2 hours and 15 minutes. What do you think of?
I slept through about an hour and 15
minutes.
Yeah,
right. How do you like the new rules? I think they're kind of cool.
I don't mind it moving faster. When it seems like when I'm at a game, I don't mind as much. Like TV, it's because if you're paying, especially if it's like a nice night, it sort of will be like sort of a bummer if it's a nice night. But I get it. I think it needs to be done because TV. I don't know who these animals are that watch baseball games in their entirety on TV. We joke around about falling asleep on the couch and whatnot, but could you imagine like watching like 60, 70 of those a year?
Well, so Ken, my stepdad, Mike, he DVRs every single game, but he thinks he's beating the system because he'll watch after the game starts so he can skip the commercials, but he will watch every single pitch of all 162. I don't get it, man. I don't understand.
I love the NFL and I watch Red Zone on Sundays. I watch the abridged version of stuff there. So, but I'm getting all the way back to our mic. I'm going to have my mic.
Oh yeah, Mike. Okay. Yeah.
So, joking around about the Pirates, but one of their two little hints of greatness since 1980, the more recent one a few years ago with Andrew McCutchen and company, who's now back. But back when I was in high school, they had some very good teams in the Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonilla, who still gets a check from the Mets, Doug Drabeck, and Jim Leland. Their catcher at that time was Mike LaValliere.
Yeah,
he was with the Pirates.
Longer hair, right?
Yeah, 87 to 93. They called him Spanky. Little pudgy little guy, really good defensive catcher. Really couldn't hit, but he was great with the pitching staff. But that was right in that prime era of when I was in high school and was following the Pirates.
Okay, so I got to ask you and I know we've talked about this play before. So Sid Bream's stumbling along the bases as he's rounding very slowly, and that pivotal
he had
game.
no fault in this. He had no fault in this play. He did nothing.
No, game 7 was that him waiting patiently for the wiffle ball?
He was their starting catcher. He was their day-to-day catcher. So.
Man, I bet you Barry Bonds. It was Bonds that threw the ball, right? I believe it was him.
Was it him or what did it go?
No, but he wasn't on that team.
Oh, okay. He was already gone to the Mets.
Yeah, I think it was Bonds. Whoever it was, man, that ball to not be able to throw out Sid Bream at home, but. Man, Sid was slow, and he was a former Pirate.
Yeah, he was. He was slow, man. My goodness. Okay, but there's our Mike of the Week, Mike LaValliere. Happy opening day to everybody.
Hey, I got to ask you too. Have you watched? I did tune in the other day to watch Cabrera try to beat out a ground ball in the infield. Man, he's a big fella now.
He is. I mean, it's funny to go back and watch that Marlins World Series. It's like two different people.
Like he ate his old self. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you know what? Whatever. I have no place to talk at all. But he's good for you know what? I will say this. He's going to play out his final career year here.
Yeah,
he's not.
Great hitter.
Yes, and that's the way Major League Baseball works. That's the way their contracts work. You don't make a lot of money when you're young.
Yeah, you're right. And he was a great Tiger. He wanted to be here. I got to stop making fun of him so much. But man, it has been a long 5 or 6 years with that guy.
They have an option for one more if they want. I think they can get an option for. I don't think that's going to happen. But the good news, speaking of the Tigers though, and Chris Ilitch, the Detroit City Council approved an expansion to the District Detroit. So 8 new parking lots will probably be made.
Here you go. I'll let you handle that. Yeah.
So 8 new parking lots probably coming to that area of Detroit. That's great news for everybody looking to park their car somewhere. All right. Education topic this week. We thought there's been a lot of news stories, and I noticed if you go to your Facebook memories, right? Isn't it funny to see what happened, where you were 3 years ago, during the COVID lockdowns, and because and what you were doing and taking walks and drive-by birthday parties and everything. Well, previous to that, what would you say, about a year or two before that all went down, we were all provided with a copy of a book, Inevitable.
Yeah, I'd say probably 2 years before.
Yeah, it was sort of like a summer read, right? Or it was a summer read, and we spent some time in professional development and staff meetings talking about it. Well, basically, it was the premise of the book, for those of you that don't want to go out and read it, was that education, the old school method of 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, every kid goes to these classes, core classes, was inevitably going to change and run out to this new system of methods to deliver education, right?
Right.
That was I mean, I'm giving the abridged version here. There's lots
Yeah, I
of
mean,
elements to it.
I guess I would simplify it and just say it was more education system more tailored to each individual student.
Yes, individual.
The math.
Yes. And in all honesty, most of us sort of chuckled at it and said, this is never going to happen. We don't have the staffing. We don't have the finances for this. We don't have we can barely get done what we need to get done with the kids we have now. How are we supposed to customize and get all these other options for these students when we can't even, we're barely running to, we're right at the point of where we're providing everything we can, fully staffed at where we are. And this just can't work. Then all of a sudden COVID happens, right? COVID happens. And, in Gibraltar, we did always have like a vocational program, right? We had, so DCTC, if you wanted to do some things that Carlson didn't offer, you could go to there. Occasionally, right, there'd be a few kids that would be on like an independent plan of maybe doing something online, right? Or, something that like a college dual enrolled off camp, I would say like about a handful of kids a year, right? Nothing crazy.
Nothing major at all, no.
Nothing major. Well, then COVID hits. And thankfully we were in a place where we were already 1-to-1. So every kid had a Chromebook. So we were already ahead of the game. And so every kid, when they went home, had the ability to do work remotely, and they did work remotely. And then,
and let me interrupt you real fast too. The fact of the matter is too, we had kids with that dual enrollment, some kids in college, that was like stagnant. We had kids doing that for a few years, and the numbers they just kind of stayed the same. It was a
handful of kids.
Nothing was changing. And for 4 or 5 years, like it was just kind of at status quo. So go on. I didn't want to but
and then all of a sudden COVID pops and hits, and I guess what we're going to be talking about today is basically what we're here to discuss is how COVID and coming back from COVID and how we came back from COVID, how that changed education and almost made inevitable a lot of what they talk about actually what's going on right now in our building, right? So why don't you talk about what your experience is, and then I'll just tell you what mine is, and we'll go from there and maybe see where do you think this goes 10 years from now?
So reading the book, I remember, first off, spoiler alert, if you don't want me to spoil the book, turn us off now, come back in 5 minutes. But they follow a fictional character who has a very almost college-like schedule, the way Monday and Wednesday is set up, the way Tuesday and Thursday is set up. And I remember thinking to myself at the start, man, this is great, but I don't see it would be troublesome for me. Like my daughter being a 9th grader now, you have a son who's a 10th grader. I don't know how you feel about this, but I wouldn't really think she'd be ready to set her own schedule that way. And I remember thinking that you find out later in the book, this character is make-believe. He's a fictional character, but this is the direction education is going to go. And so I really thought to myself, this is interesting, but I think this is pie in the sky. I think it assumes every kid is as mature as this fictional character is, and it's a fictional character for a reason. And I remember we talked about it as a staff, and a few staff members who had kids who were in high school thought the same thing. Like, yeah, this would be good for, Rob Raymond mentioned, this would be very good for my daughter, but Cal, my son, is a little more aloof, a little bit, I'm not sure he could handle it. And so it was kind of like, that was the general feeling. And again, it sounded great on paper, but it just didn't sound realistic. But obviously then, again, COVID sort of has made this a complete reality. The book is totally what we're living now in a lot of ways for a lot of kids. We see it all the time. I see students, in the library, different hours, just setting their own educational schedule with their given classes that they have, and then going to, their 4th hour, 5th hour is normal, the conventional, brick and mortar, so to speak. And, I think of a book I read there, and I've mentioned him before, this author, Yuval Noah Harari, wrote, a brief history of the past, and he did one of the present and one of the future. And one of the things he talked about in this book, which again seemed very unrealistic for me, and I think this is about 4 years old, was robots teaching the classroom. And I still don't think it's going to happen. But one of the things he mentions in there I thought was really interesting is, and Mike, I want you to think about this. Obviously, you've lost touch with the classroom, but think back when you were in the classroom. You ask a class, how many of you understand this? Very rarely do you get a kid that raises their hand and says,
no, you got to read the room.
Right. This robot would be able to see a class and look at the parameters of your face and figure out if you understand something or
Like a
not.
lie detector test.
Yeah, and cater the education to each specific student that way. And again, that sounds unrealistic, but again, what we're living with now sounded unrealistic 4 or 5 years ago. So, I don't know if that's the direction we go. Maybe there's some sort of collaboration between artificial intelligence teaching and the classroom teacher, because there's still, the kids will even say, well, that sounds good, but the classroom connection with the teacher is more important, and so
Yeah.
I think but that could be something down the road that
we'd all get a robot aide.
I mean, seriously,
Grades the papers and
I guess what
puts
frightened
the
me
books
about
away.
what frightened me about that book was the fact that this robot would be able to teach a lot more students at once. And it almost sounded like, I'm going to have to revisit the book. I actually gave it to Jessica, but it almost sounded like a Zoom-like setting before we knew what Zoom was. I don't know if Zoom had been invented yet, but that's how this robot would be teaching the class. So I just wonder if that's something like some sort of hybrid model or something like that is where we go down the road, and kind of combining what I read from that book with Inevitable. So
remember, it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, right?
Yeah, a long time, but
yeah. You be careful with those robots.
I
still, they'll need to keep one teacher around on a Segway, probably Cliff Mentor, and all of us will just be replaced by robots.
I don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
So, I think a good point you raise is, first of all, it went from being like a niche, small thing of like a few kids here and there that would go their own path to now we have a whole school, Lakeshore, which was around pre-COVID. So we have a whole virtual school, grades K through 12, right? Like, so if a kid doesn't even want to step foot into a classroom and they want to be like a gymnast, things that require a lot of time outside of school, gymnast, dancer, other things. It used to always be the quote unquote, if there's a teen pregnancy, what do we do with this student that got pregnant? Well, now it's much more of, this is what this is for. That's not what this alternative path is for. I think back to, we have many ninth graders right now that are taking an online like sign language course or something. Back when we read this book, okay, maybe the most advanced of the advanced can do this online stuff. We trust it to anybody that wants to take it. They're in the library now working.
Right.
There's many of them that are ninth grade, 10th grade. My son is in 10th. He's signing up to do the dual enrolled college next year. Chloe took many of those. I highly suggested them as the AP coordinator, more so than the AP classes. Don't come at me, College Board, but I think it's just a better route. And those classes, Nate was already asking me, he's like, so how does it work? Do we meet? I go, no, you don't meet 5 days. It's third hour in your advisory, and you're like either 2 or 3 days a week. The other 2 days you have nothing. Some of those kids sit in the library, some go home for, do whatever. But it's this freedom that is now here. Are all parts of Inevitable here? No, not yet, obviously. But many parts that we were poo-pooing a few years ago, I did myself. I said, there's no way this is happening.
Right.
And now it's here. And it's not only here, it's not just aimed at, people think, oh, that must just be for the college-bound kids. It's not just aimed for the college-bound kids.
No, it's everybody. It's
anybody that wants
ninth grade kids.
Yeah.
Ninth grade kids who you would, like I said, I didn't think my kids would be able to handle it. I certainly didn't think that the student in the book most kids would be that way. We have ninth graders doing it, and they're doing fine.
No. And the counselors do a great job. Our people that do sort of the online stuff, Kelly Sims and Evie Crampton do some work, with these students that are taking, a lot of these classes are AP classes that we don't offer. We couldn't offer AP micro and macroeconomics in the past. We didn't have the staffing to do it. Well, now these kids can take that online, and there's a lot of fear on our end. I know staffing was like, oh, they're going to lay us all off because everyone's going to be online. And that's really not what happened. We haven't lost any staff. We're still full to the brim. It's just that some students are able to, maybe instead of taking another elective or repeat that they really didn't want, that really wasn't going to help them in any way, they're able to take something that is going to prepare them for the next level. I personally think that's great. And I fully admit, 3-4 years ago, I was like, there's no way. And now I love it. I love it in the library, which they redid. And part of the reason they put all this money into it was because they wanted a place where kids could come to work on all these things. It's not just a place every once in a while. So I have kids every day, every hour that use it as a place to work, they use the conference rooms to get in Zoom meetings with online professors or instructors. And totally different. And if anything, as years go down, as the years move on the road, I think more and more students, are going to look
Yeah,
into
for
doing
sure.
that. And I think there's going to be more and more programs offered. I think it doesn't hurt our staffing at all. I think we have plenty of classes that are full that have to be there, but what it does is it gives some freedom to students. And I'm sure that, does every student succeed and do great in it? I'm sure there's some that, oh, whoa, this wasn't for me, I'm not doing it next year, or I'm not doing it next semester, and they fix and they solve the problem, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So we'd love to hear what other people that work in other buildings, like how much, that's what I really want to know. Like, I know like Woodhaven is very similar to us too, because that was part of like, we sort of follow what they do. They have a commons area, basically. That's what a lot of these schools are going to,
Yeah.
right? Like it used to be pre-COVID, there's 6 hours of the day, you're in a room for 6 hours. The only time you're not in that room is going to lunch or the bathroom, right? Like, and now it's almost more of like a college feel, where you have just a commons area where people can go to work because they don't have a class 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? Like
Right.
they
Right.
have, and we let people. And I think that's another reason why they redid the cafeteria furniture so nice. It's not just tables and chairs,
Right.
because that's
Now,
a place. It's
yes,
much more of a lounge-like feel, so kids are
sure.
able to go down there and work. There's Wi-Fi available. It's man, 10 years ago, or even like when we first started, could you imagine like telling lads like all these kids would be leaving the building to go
Oh
for
man, he
lunch,
would he would have lost his
or
mind.
like, just, I used to have to, like, every kid that came to the library, I'd be like, where's your pass, where are
Yeah.
you coming from? Now I don't.
Right.
You come in, and if I don't, granted, could there be skippers that are
I'm
doofuses in
sure
there?
there is,
Yes,
but yeah.
there is, but that's, it's because 98% of the people in there are supposed to be there. So
Right.
um again, yeah, I just love to hear what other schools are experiencing, or what your own kids are experiencing. I'm happy. Uh, uh, I was skeptical early, but now I think it's definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
As a parent, I definitely think it's a good thing, because, like I said, what I like is like my son's gonna be able to experience a college class now next year at no cost out of our pocket. He's going to have college credit, and he's going to, and again, no, not knocking any other elective or whatever, but this is something that I think is important for what he wants to do.
Right.
Do
Right.
you think your daughter's going to end up taking like one of those down the road?
Am going to strongly encourage it. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I also, I hope the whole AP thing, I do want to give a little plug for the AP, just because, and not to I know how you feel about the College Board, but I do think, just being in the AP classes in our school, it's such a different atmosphere in those classes.
Yep.
So I do want to plug them, and I know your attack was directed somewhere else, rightfully so.
And my problem with it too is I think the AP, if you're really good in a subject area, you should take those classes. So if you're a really good English
Yes.
person, or you're a really good social studies person, you should take those classes. You should not be taking, if we have 1,100 kids and our graduating class like 200 to 300 kids, there should not be 30 kids taking 5 AP classes.
Right.
The statistic, it's just not
Of course.
statistically
Right.
accurate.
Right.
But I can't stop people from doing what they want to do because they get a grade point boost. But again, like my daughter took the one she was strong in, but didn't take everything, and that's fine. Again, they are good. You're right. They help prepare you as well. Like Nate is also taking like an AP US history, I believe, because that's something he's good at. He's good at social studies. He's probably not going to take the AP English class, because his writing isn't as great as his social studies mind is, I guess.
Right.
So
Right.
again, I'm not knocking the whole program. It serves a purpose. I think when people, I think the College Board takes advantage of people,
Sure.
with false claims. So,
Right.
all right. So it is spring break week for us as well. Last year we traveled the world. This year we traveled downriver. So we are home this week. Nate at one point pulled up, I guess, on Snapchat. You can see a map of where all your friends are, and like the state of Florida was just covered with little bitmojis of people that,
I know. Yes. Yes.
Am I right? Yeah. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to sound like
Yeah.
the boomer guy. So I thought, okay, what a great topic for us this week to be overrated, underrated, the state of Florida. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people are indifferent, but a lot of Michigan people go there for spring break. It seems to be like the norm, right? Like 75.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. So with that, what do you have? How many times have you been to Florida in your life before we start this? Can you roughly, more than two?
Only twice. I think
Only
it's
twice?
twice. I think I didn't really have to stop and really think about it. Maybe 3 times. Actually, three times.
Man, I would have to. Now that I think about it, I've actually been a lot because I went as a kid to Disney with my mom and my parents, and then I did a wedding when I was like in high school, and my cousin got married down there. Then I did Disney twice with the kids, just us, and then Dr. Rice took us one time. That's a third time. Then I
Oh
did.
yeah,
I mean, actually been a lot. I've been to a Steeler Tampa game. We did a baseball
man,
trip. The baseball trip where Dr. Rice got called out by Ramon Colon,
former Tiger pitcher.
we were right behind him. Man,
What
I
what
guess
did what did what did Cologne say?
I cannot say we'd lose our family friendly,
Oh,
and I don't have the
okay.
beep.
Just asking. All right.
He was not happy with Mr. Rice asking Dolzemire for an autograph, and not Ramon.
Oh
Ramon
man,
was,
Rice has an amazing impact on everybody.
yeah, Dolzemire. That's a name from the past.
Yeah,
That
it's
was a
our
good Tiger
hero.
team that year. All right, so with that, what do you have for overrated Florida?
All right, so I'm gonna really I'm taking this one in my own direction, and I have to because I just took my daughter to get her teeth cleaned, and so my underrated is gonna be Mike. I've done my research and I'm thinking outside the box here, and I'm not a sheep, so I'm gonna take this topic and run with it. All right.
All right, it's yours.
My over, but no, I'm going over here. My overrated though is just going there itself. So many people go at once. You talked about the travel, traveling down there and how you don't like dealing with the crowds and all that stuff. Well, that's your entire trip when you go. I remember at
Especially
Disney,
this time of year, spring break time.
yes, and granted, Disney was not during spring break. When we went to Disney, I just remember getting on the buses at the end of the night, and every single adult just looked absolutely miserable. Every single one, sweaty and smelly and just miserable. So I'm just going Florida in general.
The
And
crowds.
it's not. Yeah, and I went to St. Pete Beach and spent some time at Clearwater Beach my senior year, and it was cool. It was nice. I don't think those are. I know they're hot spots, but I don't think they're not Panama or Daytona or wherever else MTV used to go. But it was a decent time. But I remember even at that time, it was just like, what is this? This isn't all it's cracked up to. We could have just done this somewhere else. But so I'm just saying Florida in general. There's
The whole
always
state's overrated.
the whole. I remember 88.7 used to do a bit, every morning where they would say this happened in Florida, and there was always some anecdotal and I'm sure selective cherry picking story about only this could happen in Florida, but the whole thing in general. So I'm going Florida.
Man, you painted a broad brush. My overrated is going to be the Orlando area. When there's so much, I think other things better outside of there. Like, because the problem is you go to Orlando and you're sort of stuck in the middle of it's a swamp, right? And you're at it's amusement park central, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I get it, man. I'm not, we had, Disney has made their money, and I did it. Like I said, I did it. My mom took us there with my grandma when I was a kid. We did 2 trips with the kids. I said, we're done. And I am done. And it was fine. There's other people that go all the time. I'm not here to, whatever brings other people joy that doesn't break the law, that's fine with me. It's none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that area, that part of town, to me, if I had to pick, like if you said, here's $4,000 or $5,000, you want a trip to anywhere in Florida, I would avoid that area. I would avoid that. Like I would not, that would be a place that I would not want to go, because I think there's other areas, and I'll get to that, am I underrated,
Okay.
that I would go. So I think that's like the overrated part, but I think that's where a lot of people go, and that's their thing. I get it. Not my thing. Not my thing.
Okay.
But I'm not a big amusement park guy in general. Like even like Syrup, that's not my thing. I just don't find, other than eating there. I know this is going to shock the listeners. I joke around with my kids all the time. Like Cedar Point, if they sold a pass, like a band, that you didn't get to ride any rides, but you could just go eat the food, I'd have no problem with that.
Cedar Point food.
Well, I'm just saying good food, like carnival, like food like that, cheese on a stick.
Okay.
The cheese fries are really good too.
At Cedar Point.
Yeah. But I haven't been there in years, so I don't know.
Okay.
All right, what's your underrated? Since the whole state's overrated, I don't know what you're going to give us as underrated.
Yeah. So listen, like I said, I was at the dentist today with my daughter, and the person cleaning her teeth mentioned that her daughter her and her friends were trying to find somewhere in Florida to go, and there was like nowhere, so they went to New York. So I'm going underrated.
New York City?
New York State. New York City, yes. They're staying right outside Central Park. Nice. And I've never heard this before. Like I've heard of like the band going. So I know you said Florida, but I thought this was so cool that they did this.
So avoiding Florida is your underrated.
Avoiding Florida is my underrated. And here's the thing. So my thought was, well, the weather though, it's chilly, and it's probably I can't imagine New York's that drastically different today than here. But she said they're having the best time. They're so glad they did this, and I'd never heard this as a senior class trip. So
yeah, hey, that's teach their own. I mean, but I love your overrated is the whole state, and your underrated is avoiding the state. That's
avoiding
great.
going in, and again,
we're not going to be the Florida Tourism Bureau is not going to be sponsoring the Pass the Mic podcast.
No, and our regular listeners, the Pates are going to be all upset with us, and maybe Elizabeth will tune us out for a bit.
They were in Universal. They were my overrated. They were in Universal.
I'm sure the Burr guys are going to let us have it a little bit too. Bill always has something to say, but this is, I think it's pretty cool. I love New York City. I've been there twice. So I thought that was cool. I think that's interesting. And it happened today. It's almost like I had to bring that to Pass the Mic.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's fine. My underrated sort of ties in with my overrated, as I sort of hinted to, that if I, almost if I had the $5,000 prize, right? I think the Gulf Coast area and you mentioned Clearwater, St. Pete Beach, even up.
And that was going to be my underrated. That was
the for us here in Michigan, to me that's like the nicest beach area within close travel, ocean travel. All right, ocean beach. Okay, I've given my philosophy on Myrtle Beach and the whole East Coast. I mean, that's night and day compared to like Clearwater, Clearwater Beach, St. Petersburg, and then I haven't been to Destin. I know my sister and a bunch of our coworkers are there right now, I believe, right? Rocky and company.
Yeah.
I hear that's beautiful up there too. We went a few years ago. We drove down there. It was nice because it wasn't crowded. It was just you get up, you go to the beach, you can walk up and down the little strip. There's restaurants that you can go into with just a t-shirt on and a pair of shorts. It didn't have to. I always think back to like what was that movie with John Candy, Summer Rental, where it wasn't anywhere fancy like that, where you had to like worry about the locals and all this stuff. So the Gulf Coast, I mean, you can't deny, especially for us that are living through this crappy weather up here, the weather that is beautiful down there to get some sun, and it's drivable, and it used to be reasonable, but as more and more people move into the state, Florida, that was the other thing about Florida too. It used to be a reasonable travel destination from here, right? Like you could fly into a lot of the places out of Detroit Metro, but the problem is that it's getting so, I mean, everywhere's expensive. I hate to sound like, get off my lawn guy. I mean, I'm looking at stuff right now, trying to find somewhere to go this summer. Everything is expensive. Everything. Mm-hmm. Like maybe Cedar Point will have to be where I have to go. I don't know, but that Gulf Coast is very nice. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a beach vacation and you're deciding, like I said, if you're like, should I go to Myrtle Beach or should I go to the Gulf Coast of Florida? I'm going to tell you to go to the Gulf Coast of Florida.
And again, like I said, that was going to be my underrated, but this thing with New York happened today, so
yeah. That's fine. All right, awesome. All right, you got a hot mic take for us?
Yeah, I was gonna hold off on this with our guest next week, but it's fresh on our minds. So this thing in Nashville happened this week.
Oh yes, we didn't even. Yeah.
I'm not even gonna go into the statistics I've heard this year that are absolutely disgusting. The number of school shootings that have been this year, but it's astronomical. And I heard a politician, and I'm not gonna. We have our political beliefs, and you and I are pretty similar. But
is this the guy that says we're not going to solve this problem?
Yeah, and I think that
imagine if we said that in our industry.
Oh my God! And
test scores are bad. Hey, we're not going to solve this problem.
Too bad. Yeah, we're going to stick our heads in the sand. That's got to be a litmus test for a voter. If the politician you're voting for says, I don't know, that we're not solving this, it's going to have, if somebody's crazy enough to do this, what are you going to? That has to be a person that's got to go. If that's your answer to this, you got to go. You got to go.
Whatever your political, when I saw that, and whatever your political beliefs may be, if that is unacceptable for anyone in any field. If you go to the McDonald's up the road, and say, your Coke machine, you gave me the wrong Coke. It's died again. We've done this 4 times. He's like, hey, I can't solve this problem.
Right.
That McDonald's worker should be fired. All right. Like
what more do you need from a guy to say this guy does not belong in office? You know what I mean? Like, and again, everybody has their solutions that are, that I probably don't agree with a lot of them, but at least if any trying to solve this.
If any politician with whatever letter D, R, or I answer their name said that, I would never vote for them again.
Never again.
Never again.
No, it's
like
you're
basically telling me you're incompetent.
Get out of the
Can't
way.
can't can't
That's
solve
what
this.
resign immediately. Like that.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
there? I realize we have a lot of pressing issues, but if that's not up at the top of near the top of the list, something is wrong. And to say, hey, I don't know what to tell you. Like, goodbye.
Yeah, it's
Get
sort of
out of the way.
sad we didn't even mention it in the opening because it's sort of become commonplace. The one thing I do want to speak out is I normally don't get. I don't want to say I don't get scared with these. I mean, I feel confident and safe in our work environment. The one thing that sort of was eye opening and scary to me because like all the time, right? Like it's like, oh, how'd they get in? They left the door open or something. When you see that video of what that gun did to that secured entry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
so I mean, what's next? Now the secure entries aren't good enough. We're going to put in like bulletproof glass because I mean that thing just tore that glass out. Like
Right through it. Yeah.
it took seconds. Now, granted,
Seconds.
that held her up, and they were able to set. You're able to hear that, but that to me was sort of my first eye opener. Went like, holy cow, And again, I'm not a firearms expert. I'm not here to say I am. Would a pistol be able to do that quickly? Who knows? That's neither here nor there. It was just
No,
sort
and
of eye
shout
opening.
out,
And
man. The Nashville PD really looked good
oh,
on this one.
that
Amazing.
video they
So,
put out, yeah. And
yeah.
again, we were texting, and those guys, like, I could not imagine going forward like that with and they were outgunned
Yes,
with
they
what this
were.
person had,
Right.
and these guys were just moving right ahead. And I tell you what, that's again, like we said, right? Most teachers are doing their job, are great people. Most
Yeah.
police officers are too. Like those guys
Yeah.
there, I mean, didn't even pause. And then knowing they were probably underarmed. So it is a sad story, man. But you're right. I'm glad you brought up that politician because I thought of that too. My hot mic take, and I want your opinion on this sort of. So I'm going to keep tying in with spring break. A lot of people gone. We were gone last year. A lot of people. So social media. I'm on the Instagram and Facebook. I think there's like two trains of thought, I guess, of people being on vacation. All right. I think there's a percentage of people that if they see a lot of posts, they don't like it, I guess. All right. I'm not saying that's me. Or there's a group that, like me, I love seeing people post stuff on their trips. I have no jealousy. I have no
Mm-hmm.
ill will. As a matter of fact, I'll often tell people, and I've told people post more, like I love to see other places maybe I'm not going to go. I don't get angry. But I do know that some people are hesitant posting. I don't think it's as much as like safety of their house being broken into. I think people sometimes have this fear of, oh, I hope people don't think I'm showing off, right? Like I think that's a common thing with these social media posts. I just want to say on my behalf, I never think it's showing. Like this is what this is supposed to be for. You guys are. Last year we were in Europe doing it. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed. We did videos and stuff. We were enjoying ourselves. This year we're home. Let me tell you what. I'm still enjoying myself. I had some great naps this week. I've cleaned my office up here. Uh, but I love seeing what people are experiencing. Maybe, I might even say, oh, that might be a place I might look to go to, or I'll ask them when they get back. What's your feeling on that? I'm curious how you feel.
Honestly, I don't, Mike. You're not gonna be surprised on this. I'm apathetic. Like it doesn't bother me. Nobody's posts generally bother me necessarily. But I think with spring break, there's so many posting it. You get inundated with them, and therefore at that point, I just kind of stop looking. If it's
I mean, I
during
don't
like
think
this,
nobody's going to comment on our page and say, "Oh yeah, I hate when people post." But I know there are people that have that feeling.
yeah, I mean, I
it,
looked at. Admittedly, I looked at the Pates. I did look. It's here and there. You see people on bumper cars. I kind of like seeing that kind of stuff. But there's just so many that it kind of is like I sort of just end up. But I'm not a big social media guy anyway. I go on Facebook or Twitter maybe 2 or 3 minutes a day, so I don't spend as much time.
the page did
Um,
send me this cool picture from their trip. They didn't post it. It says "number one doofus." I think it was a car. I think it was a plate in the Simpsons world or Universal Orlando. So,
yeah,
um, again, it's just something I thought of, and I've said it before too. I said I made a post in December when college graduates were posting their because sometimes people graduate college in December. I'm a December grad. I don't know if you were, and they post like all their pictures getting
yeah.
in their gown, pictures with their family, and I always tell people post away. Like that's something like I have no problem with that. And I don't know. Maybe it's just as I get older. I could care less what other people think. I don't care what others say. I just hope that sometimes people don't hold back because they're worried, like people thinking, oh, they're bragging.
Yeah.
I never think that. Never think that. I think that's great that and plus, like I said, I just like to, again, if I had my way, I'd travel somewhere different every month. I'm not going to be able to do that. So if other people go to these places or try these places out, I'd love to see the pictures and see what's going on.
So when we go on our Europe trip next year, Natalia and me, you want me to
post away, and I'll be gladly probably sleeping on the couch again to opening day. And
kind of a bummer that you're not going next year, because we could have filmed
Pass the Mic in Italy.
On the road again, yeah.
I know. That's a bummer. We might have to do a remote episode overseas. I don't know what the Wi-Fi will be like there for you. So
yeah.
All right, well, that looks like everything today. Back to the real world next Monday. Although next week's not a bad week for the kids at Gibraltar. Half day Thursday and then off on Friday for Good Friday. I'm almost made it through all of Lent, no booze. I made it through the big Skopczynski wedding, didn't have one drink. So I've I hope I didn't bring me not having a drink for this long. It may have brought ill health on the Pope or something. I know he's not doing too well. So
too soon.
So sorry. All right. Well, hey, everybody have a great week, and we will see you next week.